All right, welcome everyone to the Week 7 recap, Week 8 preview show. It's just the three Musketeers this week: yourself, Cam Cooper, and Colin Hampton.
What's
Thank
up?
you. Thank you, Nick, for being a phenomenal host throughout with no direction. There's never any structure. We just press record and here we are.
I also realized I said yourself instead of myself, but I was looking at myself, so it works. Clearly an unscripted podcast here. Should we dive right into the
Let's
Week
get into
7
it.
action? This was a very, very tight median, as Cam mentioned earlier today, I think, in the group chat. My team fortunate to overcome yet another GM miscalculation on which quarterback I should start. I seem to have perfect luck of picking the wrong quarterback to start week in and week out. So I started Goff, and honestly would have done better if I had started Tyson Bagent. So that was a bummer. No longer with the team, Tyson Bagent. But the rest of the roster did what they normally do. Overcame 33 for Mahomes. Pretty good performance. Michael Mayer, I still cannot find a tight end either. But other than that, not a bad week.
That seems to be what happens. No matter which position you pick to have the carousel on, whether it's tight end, quarterback, kicker, defense, whatever your carouseling position is, it never seems to work. It always seems to be like the most frustrating part about a fantasy season is like, oh my God, how could I have never picked the right tight end? In your case, the quarterback. But it doesn't matter. You picked the wrong quarterback, but you're on the right side of the W, even with 115 points. That's what really matters here. Close median as well, just by what, a point?
Less half a point.
Less than a point, yeah.
Less than a point. So squeaking this one out. You're above 500 now. Last week you made 500. Now you're above it. So that's definitely got to feel good. But Rob is a little bit lifeless. Another 100 point less game. I don't know, man. We were just talking about this right before this, but some people are a little less active with their rosters, whether it's trades or waivers, and I think some of these teams might have to be as active as they've ever been coming to this home stretch here, and that includes Rob's team.
Yeah, this is a game obviously that I was watching till the end of Monday night with the median at play for my game. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking down Rob's roster and you know, it, not a ton to be excited about. I mean, Mahomes finally had one of his big games we kind of waiting for all season. I think his next closest game was 25 points, right? So this is the Mahomes that we kind of expected. I thought it was interesting that Rob blew a bag on Zach Evans in Fab and your waiver wire pickups this week, and he didn't even get an offensive snap for LA. So it just seems like the move that he's making don't seem to be panning out either. It's tough. I mean, he's kind of been sliding the wrong way, and it seems like players just are not hitting their stride like you'd expect them to. Rob's usually a competitive player in this league, but I mean, hats off. Nick wins the games that he has to win. So that's the mark of a good manager, regardless of who you have at quarterback that week. So you seem to find a way to pull out victories even when your team isn't performing. 115 really isn't that bad, but I know you probably wanted a little bit more to secure at least higher points forward, and because you're kind of in the mix of that craziness between the 5 seed and the 10 seed. But hats off, man. That was a good hard fought victory. You still have players who are going to perform. I mean, ETN is still looking like the dude. He's like totally, I think, overperformed his draft. His draft pick, even though you think it's just a third rounder. But he's the number 3 running back overall right now. So that ended up being a really solid pick for you.
Yeah, I think this was the week to play me too, because I had Pollard, Pierce, and Jamar all on bye. I was worried about, were we going to have enough firepower coming off the bench? I think, Rob's team early probably looked better than it was because the Dallas defense was playing so well and covering up a lot for him. But yeah, I mean, on a bye week for them as well, he probably doesn't have enough firepower up and down the roster, as currently constructed to be a threat. Maybe enough to kind of sneak into the playoffs if things break his way, but probably not a lot to go much further without some shakeups here. Next we have Alex's first trip above the median this season, outperforming expectations by 30, with an assist from his opponent who reminded him to set his lineup at the last second. And that cost Troy a win here. Still gets above the median himself, but would have been able to win had he just kept his mouth shut and let Alex play like four guys who were on a bye.
Yeah, putting up 129 and still losing hurts, especially to the worst team in the league. Troy can't really catch a break so far this season. And he's still battling for that spot. I mean, that playoff spot. He's in the 9th spot. And we'll talk about it, later on. But him and Cam play next week. So that'll be a battle for, just staying in the playoffs or working his way in. That's a big game next week. We kind of didn't expect this from Alex, but we're not expecting any more from him. I expected more from Troy's team. I know the Bengals looked bad to start and then they kind of clicked, but the rest of his guys aren't really hitting on all cylinders, at least at a consistent rate. Jackson Smith-Njigba, he was supposed to be a little bit more productive early on, but now he finally finds that first touchdown. So maybe he's got luck in his favor on this back half of the season, but losing to Alex, even after putting on 129 to come back from the midway point. Hopefully his things turns around for him. I'm not sure how many things are turning around for Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I love what this does for the playoff hunt right now. I mean, there's 3 games separate the 6 seed from the 12 seed. I love that as an agent of chaos in this league. But yeah, I mean, obviously the Deontay Foreman addition and plug into the lineup was huge. Not really sure what's going on in that Bears backfield with Fields coming back and all their running backs who are hurt or on the concussion protocol. I love it. I want to see Alex continue to be a competitive player in this league. Just interesting that Puka Nacua still got 12 targets in that LA Rams offense. I know that's a bright spot for Troy, number 4 overall receiver right now. People probably would have expected that. I think he's still overall in the games that Cooper Kupp has played, he still has a higher target share in that offense, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to score 129 and lose, but I really want to see Alex, kind of turn it around here and see what kind of chaos he can cause in the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season.
So on that note, Alex tied for 11th in terms of record, only behind Rob on points. And as you mentioned, Cam, just 3 games out of the 6th seed right now. Shine or shade, Alex does not finish on bottom of the league.
It's hard to say. I'm going to shine it. I think that top to bottom, I like Alex's team more than I like Rob's team. I think that Alex's players are starting to get going. It took him 7 weeks to kind of get them all to click. But I mean, I think there's been a couple of weeks that Rob hasn't scored 100 points. Alex dropped 130, right? I like Alex's roster better when they click. They just haven't done it very often. So I'm going to shine that. I don't think Rob necessarily finished last, but I think he's the most likely candidate outside of Alex. So I'm going to shine that he doesn't finish in last place.
I'll shade it. I think he still finishes last. I mean, he's got a nice, win versus Troy this week, and then versus me a couple weeks ago. Still rarely gets over the median. I think this is the first time he's been over the median. Again, with the activity level, I think both of them are pretty low, but I'd say Rob is still a little bit more active than Alex, which means, trade is likely. Maybe he picks up the right guy on waivers towards the end of the season or something. I'll put Alex still at the bottom.
And Mr. Commish, you took an L this week, both against the median and also head to head against another fierce opponent who's now tied with you on record, Jason here. Thoughts on the defeat?
Yeah, this is another game where the teams that played, the result ended up making the records the same. I think that happened. I don't know, one of the games we just talked about, or maybe I'm pretty sure it
My
happened.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Cam's game.
Yep.
that seems to be a thing in this league. It's parity, right? These teams are averaging out, beating up on each other. Herbert for me was a no-show against Kansas City. You expect more out of him. Devontae Smith's fallen off quite a bit, especially since AJ Brown threw that fit just because he wanted the ball more. So they're giving AJ Brown all the looks instead of Devontae Smith. So I'm a little salty about that, Cam. Thank you. I know you got AJ Brown, so you're happy about it. But like throwing a fit like a petulant 5-year-old kid and then getting the ball more and it works, fuck, like that doesn't help me at all. My kicker was so bad he just got cut by their team, so he's not on anybody's roster, let alone mine. Um, and then this is Jason's just got such a solid team. He has the luxury of playing Jamison Williams. He has the luxury of trying out a player on his team, still scoring 140, still getting the dub in the median. So, this is kind of a little bit of a statement game for Jason, playing with the guys he's beating the people who are above him. He's trying out players midway through the season who get a goose egg for you and still putting up 140 in a win. Jason's team is scary for all the reasons that we've talked about all season. His best players, there they are, right there. Look at that, 33 from Jackson, Jonathan Taylor coming back, finding his feet, and Alvin Kamara just being the beast mode that he is. Like, man, Jason's team is scary this year, and I'm glad I got my matchup with him out of the way until the playoffs at least.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this a couple weeks ago. I know Jason didn't really show up last week, but we were talking about him and Eric's team as being some of the scarier teams, especially now that Jason's hitting the stride. I'm really happy to see Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss split the totes 18 and 18, but Jonathan Taylor did a lot more with his touches than Zach Moss did, as somebody who's still reeling from that Zach Moss trade with Trevor. I'm happy to see that he's I think the league, the NFL, is better when your stars are performing well, right? So I'm happy to see Jonathan Taylor perform really well, Alvin Kamara perform really well. Like, I think the league is just better when your stars are doing what they're supposed to do. Obviously, George Pickens is a man possessed. You mentioned the Jamison Williams addition by Jason to plug him into the lineup. Also, Josh Downs kind of becoming a highlighted receiver in that Indy offense with Anthony Richardson out for the rest of the season. And Jason still has Josh Palmer performing really well on the bench. I still think Khalil Herbert is the guy in Chicago when he gets healthy. So still some players he can plug in. He just hasn't had obviously everybody healthy or playing at the same time yet, but still, a lot of firepower on his bench that he hasn't completely deployed, in 1 week. It's tough you didn't have Adam Thielen playing this week either. And Tank Dell on bye. I think those are two kind of shooters you have on your bench that weren't able to perform for you, but that's tough. I mean, despite 16 touchdowns in a row by CMC, he wasn't able to carry you any further. And I think there was a Jamison Williams touchdown, Javonte Williams touchdown that was overturned, right? He scored in that game. They called it back, I think. So that's tough.
CMC can only do so much. I mean, scoring a touchdown every week is all you can ask for, and it still wasn't enough this week. That's a tough look from the rest of my teammates for sure.
Right. So tough callback on Javonte, and then Justin Herbert's been the guy for the Chargers for the league for this whole season, and then he kind of had to come back down to earth game this week, which kind of sucks. But I don't know. I wouldn't take this loss in the chin. Obviously, Jason's a good team, and you're still very much in the thick of even getting a 1 seed. So it's a loss, but I wouldn't. This is by far not your worst showing.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about how Jason might have the scariest roster, and Colin had a few key guys on bye, but still their pregame projections were exactly the same, 117.99. So there's it definitely a team to be feared still, despite dropping 2 games this week. Next up we have Another team that was 10-2, dropping 2 against a team that's trying to scratch and claw his way back into the playoff picture. Former guest of the pod, Johnny, taking down former guest of the pod, Eric here. We could say that about everybody. Thoughts on this matchup?
I think this is maybe subtly a rivalry game. I'm pretty sure Johnny and Eric are pretty good friends.
I think
Like
Johnny
they've
brought
known each
Eric into the league. Yeah.
Yeah, so they've known each other for a while. This is a little bit of like a divisional game, like that you just can't really predict. And look at what it turns out to be. Johnny almost doubles him up. Um, and Eric only scoring 78 points. Where does this come from? We were talking, I mean, at least I have been talking about how consistent Eric's team has been. He was the most points for in the league up until this week. And then all of a sudden he throws up 78 out of nowhere. I'm not, Eric's still going to be fine. He's still got a very solid team, nothing too much to worry about. But this is just his worst game of the league, or the worst game of the season so far against one of his close friends. That's a divisional matchup for you, just right then and there.
I see we have an additional guest on this podcast on Colin's right shoulder.
Oh yeah.
That
would be Benny. He usually hangs out with me, but not usually do we have furniture in the middle of the room, but we're packing, so we're moving in the next few weeks here, and he likes to just climb stuff as cats do.
Yeah, obviously massive game from Jordan Addison. Kind of I mean, he's been a really good receiver all year. He's number 12 overall, especially with Jay Jettis out now. He might be profiled in that offense. Excited to kind of see where he is. I kind of want to ask a shine or shade now. Johnny is 4-10. He's in the 10. He's in the 10 spot. Shine or shade that Johnny finishes in above the 8 seed. So not including the 8 seed, but the 7 seed or higher by the end of the season.
I'm going to shade that. I think his team is better than 4-10, and it's probably better than the 10 spot, but he hasn't scored more points than anybody above him. And actually Rob has scored more points to this point in the season than he has. I still don't believe, Jerry Jeudy, if he gets traded, maybe he comes alive in the second half of the season, but in his current offense has done nothing. I still feel like this is a roster that's, I don't know, he's got a ton of running backs on the bench, 2 of them being Dolphins running backs. I don't really see where he gets the juice to move up that high. I'll shade that he finishes 7th or better.
I'll shade it as well. It's a lot of work for him to do, even though he's only 2 games out. He's got to score a lot of points for the rest of the season. And like Nick said, where do those points come from? It would have to be perfect management and just kind of a flip flop of how his team has all his players, how they've performed thus far. So a lot to ask, even though it's 2 games out. I would say he doesn't make he might make the playoffs, but he won't be a 7 or higher.
How about you, Cam? Shine or shade there?
I'm gonna shine it. I mean, I'm looking at the teams above him, right? Troy, Trevor, myself, Willie. There's a lot of ground to make up between me and, he's got to get 100 points over me and 130 points over Willie over the next 4 or 5 weeks. But I think there's going to be a lot of movement, at least between the 6 and the 8 spot. There's kind of some more insulation for Nick and, seed 1 through 5 right now. I think Johnny has it in him. I think that the fact that Justin Jefferson's out for the next 3 weeks at least is going to be big for Jordan Addison. Obviously we saw that against the Niners D, which is probably the best defense in the league right now. So if they keep feeding him the rock in that offense, I think that there's going to be good things. I think Johnny still probably has to make 1 trade. He has a lot of running back firepower. I think he needs to kind of balance out his receiving room, which is weird to say because he's primarily been a wide receiver dominant team in this league over the past couple of years. But I think that I think he might finish at 7. I'll give him the push on 7 because there's still a lot of movement that's going to happen between 6 and 10, to be honest, 6 and 10 spot. So I'm gonna play optimist here and say that I'm gonna shine that.
The defending champ gets a narrow victory this week over Mr. Willie, but not enough to overcome the median, as we talked about earlier. Two strong quarterback performances, and as Colin alluded to, A.J. Brown whining his way to 24.7 points this week. Thoughts, Cam, on the win?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at my roster, and the top half of my roster performed pretty well until you get to my flex. I mean, even Gerald Everett kind of overperformed there. I think the X factor in this game was Tyler Algier and Bijan kind of being a healthy, quote unquote, healthy scratch in that game against Tampa Bay. If Tyler, I picked him up, I think on Saturday or Sunday with a waiver, or maybe Friday, and plugged him in because I had a couple of had Brees Hall on bye and Kyron's still out. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I wasn't able to overcome the median. I was really happy to get this victory over Willie because it kind of level set us and as far as standings go. But another thing that I noticed too, I mean, I was watching the median all night on Monday because Nick had Madison, I had Akers on my bench, and there was a point where Madison had gotten you enough points to be right near the median, right below it. And they were, highlighting Cam Akers in that offense for that whole drive. And I was like, I don't think Madison even got a touch during the rest of that drive. And I was like, I wonder if he might be hurt, or I thought the fantasy gods had looked kindly upon me. Obviously, he came back and he got what you needed him to get. But it was nice. It was exciting to see Cam Akers get those touches in that offense. I'm excited to potentially plug him in future weeks. Yeah, I mean, it was tough. I mean, I had Brees Hall and CeeDee Lamb on bye. Those are two of my top 4 picks. So this was, to quote Nick, this is a week to play me. And happy I got the better of Willie, but unfortunately, not the better of the median.
Yeah, when you're squeaking out these low scoring games, that's usually a good sign making the playoffs, and you're in a playoff spot, number 7. And it was that level setting game, which is always good. You're beating the people above you. This was a Willie dud, like he can have those big games and he can have these games where it's not, fireworks or anything. Willie kind of depended on Achane for a lot of those games, and he's just out now on the IR at least 4 weeks. And Cam, you clicked enough, so just a good win, get in, get out, on to Cincinnati type of situation. We can look past this and be like, this was a good close win in the middle of the season, but we move. This was just a kind of a reassuring victory, saying to yourself, all right, I can get these I can squeak these over the line. Let's keep looking forward here.
I've got a shine or shade here on this matchup. Shine or shade, is the defending champs team the most likely team under 500 currently to win the championship?
Yeah, shine. I'll shine that. History is in your favor. You're looking at Willie, Trevor, Troy, Johnny, Rob, and Alex. Of them, I guess Johnny and Rob both have a championship. Yeah, he's definitely the team that is under 500, most likely to win this year. Yes, of course. Yes.
I'm gonna shine it because I'm him. But if you took Trevor's team, put it in a vacuum, and you put my team in a vacuum, and you just said, whose team do you like more top to bottom? I still like Trevor's team, as weird as it is to say. Obviously San Fran D didn't perform very well. It's hard to say. I think that my team has a better chance of clicking on more consecutive weeks than Trevor's does, which I think helps my case in that shine or shade. I'm going to shine it, but a little bit hesitantly, because I think that all things equal, Trevor's team might have more talent. My team just put it together more consistently.
I mean, we know that I'm a big fan of benches, and I would say I think Trevor's starters might have you slightly, but at least looking at your bench this week, where you had a lot of your starters, out on bye, your bench far exceeds Trevor's, and I still believe that depth is important over like an entire fantasy football season.
Mhm.
So I still think that your team is the most likely sub 500 to win the championship, because I think you're almost guaranteed to get in, which is weird to say about a 7 seed that's only 3 games away from being in dead last. But I still think you're like, you can weather the storm of bye weeks with that bench or an injury or two better than Trevor's. If we were in the first round of the playoffs, then maybe I would say Trevor's team, because I think his starters are probably a little bit more talented. But at this point in the season, still needing 5 regular season performances just to get there, I think I would shine that as well and make your team the most likely sub 500 team to win it all. And speaking of Trevor, he fell back below 500 this week after a shellacking at the deep bench Josh's hand. Negative 1.8 from your quarterback is always going to be tough to overcome. Not a good game at all. And looks like Deshaun might make that his last performance for a while here. So we'll see. But tough pill to swallow there. The rest of the team really didn't do too poorly. Niners D lost some points as well. Again, when you have two players contributing negative points, that's going to be tough to overcome as well. But really, the quarterback performance was probably the difference between beating the median and not, at least. And really strong on the other side from Josh. He got 20 plus points from Gibbs, 20 plus points from Hill again. Rice with a touchdown, Myers with a touchdown, Hopkins got him 20 points. So strong up and down the board here from the deep bench Josh's.
Yeah, this might I don't know. Josh is scary. That's all I can say. I mean, his team name says it all. Deep bench Josh's. It's not like he has some outstanding crazy team. It's that he's so deep that every week he knows who to play and they show up for him. He just got the most points for in the league and has the best record in the league. He's the best team in the league. There's no doubting that. He's the favorite to win the championship in my eyes. I can see him going the distance. Even if some players get hurt, he has that deep ass bench. So, and I play him next week, so maybe I can, knock him down a peg. But I got to show up next week, and that's all there is to it. Josh is the best team in the league, and he is the one to, look out for going forward here.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it with Jason's game. Happy to see Zach Moss kind of come back down to earth. Obviously, Lord knows what's going on in Cleveland with Deshaun Watson and his health, but it was nice to see, as even though Josh is one of my rivals in this league, nice to see him kind of get off the schneid after the Josh Mari DeMercado debauchery that happened a couple weeks ago. And he picked up the right backup in LA with Joshua Henderson this week. Yeah, I mean, and obviously Josh Kobe Myers is continuing his tear. He's made some really solid moves, I would say, to kind of bolster his already pretty deep team, even when Josh through Stafford is really not kind of, not really carrying the load from a quarterback perspective. But I mean, you got Justin Fields probably coming back in the next couple of weeks. That might be his biggest question mark is quarterback, right? Bry Josh Young and Josh and Fields will be back for a while. So this might be, Skip, this might be the week for you to kind of take advantage of that with questionable quarterback play for a really strong team. If you could even just get a win over him, and not even the median, like that would be really big for the rest of the league, let alone your season or his.
Yeah, I definitely got to beat him next week. He's scary. I think he'll put up 140. I mean, I don't know what he's averaging right now per week. That's some tough math right there. But I got to put up 150. That's for sure. I mean, you want to put up 150 every week, but like, in order to feel confident, if you told me my team was going to score 150 next week, I'd be like, yeah, that can beat Josh. But you never know.
Yeah, I think Cam, this was also the first week where Cam Akers outperformed Zach Moss in terms of fantasy points. Excuse me.
Sorry.
We have a Zoom bomber. So this was the first week where you got the better of that trade. We talked about it could continue to trend in your direction. We'll see. It'll be interesting. I play Trevor this week, and I'm interested to see what he does with his lineup. If he leaves Zach Moss in there, he's definitely going to start a different quarterback. It'll be interesting to see does he go with Wilson or Prescott. So yeah, I think two intriguing teams. I'm really interested to see what happens with Trevor's team over the season too. Like, he's very quiet in our group chat, but is clearly relatively active actually on Sleeper, and it is still trying pretty hard, which is good to see. Kendrick Bourne was formerly on my roster, and good to see him thriving in another offense, since he's no longer a Big Nick energy. But yeah, it's a good matchup. Two teams that I think are going to be tough outs come the playoffs. But always tough when you go up against the league leader and he outperforms his expectations by 30 points. So really good week for Josh.
Yeah, for what's worth, I pulled up the calculator. Josh has averaged 135 points per week in this league, which is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
One last thing I just want to say. The mark, not necessarily of a good manager, but the mark of a good team, I would say, in this league is when you have your accoutrement players playing really well. So outside of your core running backs, receivers, and even quarterback, Josh had 25 from his kicker and his defense, compared to Trevor's 4 combined points from his kicker and his defense, right? So that difference in and of itself will win you games week over week, regardless what the median is, right, against your opponent. So just another mark of a good team, right? When you're bringing a solid kicker and a defense, like that is usually a determining factor when and how your team performs that week. So good marks for Josh.
Oh, for sure. And I got a real quick shiner shade over under here. Josh is on pace for 20 plus wins. Does he do that? Does over under 19 and a half wins for Josh? He's on pace for it.
I'll shine that he gets over that. I mean, kind of going back to what I said in the last matchup about Cam's team, I really think it's not just about your starters, but it's about who are you plugging in when your guys are on bye, and if you have an injury. And I, from the beginning, from our post-draft podcast, said I think Josh has the best bench, and I think that's helped him a lot and will continue to help him. I think he's going to probably have another bad week, where he drops a game or two, but I wouldn't expect it to be more than one. So I'll take the over.
I'm going to shade that just because of the parity in this league that's existed. I'm also looking at Josh's team, and he still has Jahmyr Gibbs facing a bye in week 9, Tyreek Hill facing a bye week 10, Cortland Sutton facing a bye week 9, Josh Kobe Myers facing a bye in the playoffs week 13, right? He still has Justin Fields facing a bye in week 13, and then Kyle Pitts facing a bye in week 11. So he has a lot of his good players still facing a bye at some point this week, or this year, but not necessarily during the same week. I think that's enough for him to drop at least 2 games head to head. So I'm going to shade it just because, one, of the parity in this league, and 2, his roster has a couple holes during some key weeks coming up here before the playoffs. So I don't think he's going to hit 20. He might hit 19. He hit 17 last year, but I don't know if he hits 20.
Looking back on the fab that was spent this week, we have, as Josh noted, the most expensive player so far in the league. Amari DiMercato brings his total fab spent on him to 42 after 25 spent by Josh, and then another 17. Rob was close. He bid 12, and Trevor got in there for a $0 bid in case nobody else made a bid. But he goes to Troy, who is complaining that he had never seemed to bid enough, and he did it this time to pick up the prized possession in our league. Not much else out there on the waiver wire. A couple other pickups for a couple bucks here and there, but that was really the main action.
Yeah, I think Josh's pickup for Pierre Strong, I think that'll be that'll pay dividends. The Browns traded for Pierre Strong, so they wanted him in some capacity, and now that he's got the opportunity to maybe not be the lead back, but he can show off being who he can be in that good offensive line, good running offense opportunity there. Pierre Strong, that's low key. But DeMercado thing, like I want that to work out because you know all these running backs and a lot of these players, we're spending hefty change for some of these guys, and then they don't even play a snap the next week. That's like I feel like that's some sort of new thing this year. Maybe I didn't notice it in the past, but like for some reason this year it feels like there's been guys who are like the number one waiver wire pickup, and then it's an absolute dud that very week.
Yep.
So like I'm hoping it works for Troy, especially because how I was saying last week about some of his decision making, they just haven't fallen the right way for him. I'm hoping that this works out because $17 on a running back that should be the lead guy there, we just went through it 2 weeks ago. He was $26 2 weeks ago. So like, I'm not sure if this is going to be like a repetitive mistake that we all make, or if it finally is going to be like this was the number one free agent for a reason, and then he scores a touchdown or two or whatever. So like, just want this to kind of work out so that everyone isn't so scared to spend the fob to get these guys. I kind of like seeing the rush to get these guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, same thing happened with Rob this week, right? With Zach Evans, who didn't even play the offensive snap, which was really questionable. I'm interested to see what happens with Josh Murray. I mean, I definitely think his value has gone down aside from his usage, right? James Conner is just hit the halfway point of his IR stint right now. So I'm not sure, when he's going to be out for 4 weeks or 2 remaining weeks. So we'll see kind of what happens with DeMercado moving forward. And I mean, that offense in and of itself is a big dumpster fire, but James Conner is expected to be back for week 10, which is only 3 weeks away.
Same with
So
Kyler Murray.
right,
Kyler
or
Murray
maybe
just
even week
practiced
9, maybe even week 9 too. So
yeah,
hopefully Troy gets the value out of DeMercado that he kind of expected or that he paid for. Happened with Zach Evans this week, DeMercado a couple weeks ago, and this week. I also dropped like $24 on Quentin Johnson after who got hurt? Keenan Allen.
Mike Williams.
Mike Williams got hurt. That's right. And he has not performed well at all in that wide receiver 2 role and what should be a high potent offense, right? So that's been, you're right. It's been a thread so far this year of like folks who we expect to pop off.
Yeah, Willie spent $15+ on Michael Wilson in that same Arizona offense, and he's done fuck all since. So,
yeah.
I'd
also like to point out, and this is interesting, if Troy didn't get DeMercado, he also had a bid prepped for 17 for Pierre Strong. Pierre Strong ended up going for 1, but Troy was prepared to drop a bag for Pierre Strong. He seemed determined to get a running back for sure this week.
And one other waiver wire ad that I think kind of went under the radar, but I noticed before waivers dropped this week that Robert Woods was like the highest trended player as far as projections go this week, and Trevor got on for free, which I think might be an interesting play come the rest of the season, right? Not obviously past his prime, right? And he's a number 60 overall receiver, and he's still a little bit banged up. But I mean, you look at the defense that they're playing over the next 4 weeks, right? Carolina, Tampa Bay, since he's probably a good defense, but Arizona, right? So this could be a good sneaky pickup for Trevor with Robert Woods, who's going to be playing an offense that's going to have to pass the ball a lot. So
I could see that, but Tank Dell is also, I think Tank Dell came back from practice too. So he'll be back in that offense. He was a spark a couple weeks ago, then got injured, then they had a bye week. So he's been out for a bit, but it'll be interesting to see that offense. They got Nico Collins, who, we've all heard about this season. He's been really consistent. But between Robert Woods, Tank Dell, and another rookie, Xavier Hutchinson, let's see who kind of takes lead receiver roles, or I guess not lead, but second receiver role in that offense there.
Yeah, and I do think, I mean, there were some pickups last year that didn't pan out for decent dollar amounts of fab. I think it's more prominent this year. But for example, Richie James cost $15 last year, did nothing. Mike Boone, $15. I think he had one good week. Alec Pierce, $11, didn't do anything last year. Kenyon Drake, $23. Robbie Anderson, $21. Robbie Anderson might have been the worst example last year. People thought when he got traded from Carolina to Arizona that he would do something. Odell, $25. And then did he even sign for a team last year? I don't think so.
I don't think he did.
So, we did have some examples of high dollar spend last year that didn't even sign for an NFL team. But yeah, I think more cases this year of guys we think are about to become RB1 and then don't for whatever reason.
I think it's also every week too. It seems like every single week there's been high dollar, high ticket item that doesn't show up. So
yeah. Well, quickly, since I think we have a little bit of time as we look ahead to week 8, some good matchups. Obviously we talked about Colin versus Josh at the top of the roster, at the top of the league here. Maybe Cam versus Troy, the most important one this week, potentially.
That's a big playoff fight.
Yeah. Me versus Trevor, another one for teams scrapping for position and trying to stay in the playoff hunt. And then here's a shine or shade for you. Rob versus Johnny, 3-11 versus 4-10. Shine or shade, the loser of that is eliminated from the playoffs. Not mathematically, obviously, but
after this week, there's still 4 more weeks. As long as they're not 5+ games out of the playoffs, which they could be. Yeah, I would shine that. I would say that's a fair lock it in. If you're losing this game, you kind of you might be missing the playoffs. You might be looking towards next season or whatever it may be. I'll shine that. Yes.
I'm going to shine that. And I'm also going to publicly on this podcast call out Johnny. This is a put up or shut up game, right? We've been giving you a lot of grace this whole season about how your team is better than they're supposed to be. This is a team that you should beat, right? If you want to make the playoffs, this is a week that you got to show up, put your best team forward, because I agree. I'm going to shine it that the loser of this game is out of the playoffs, not mathematically, but I don't see the loser of this game fighting their way back in for a playoff spot. So I'm going to call Johnny out on this podcast saying, put up or shut up. This is the week, man. You got to do it against Rob, who, get him out of the picture if you want to kind of stay relevant and in this race. Very important game for you both. But I'm throwing down the gauntlet with Johnny this week. I want to see him do it. I think that he could be a 7 seed in this playoff. But this is my public kind of calling to arms of Team J3 switch on seeing if this team is legit.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
I think obviously Jason will be on upset alert playing a high flying Alex Applebaum squad.
Well, that's another one of those divisional games. Those two are tight. Those two are good friends. Pretty sure Jason was Alex's best man. So that is like a divisional fight. That is Cleveland Browns versus Cincinnati Bengals, or the Ravens versus the Bengals. That is going to be. They're both going to be on their phones more than the average week because of who they're playing against. I would love to be a fly on a wall if they were sitting in the same room during this weekend.
And currently, as the projections stand, they both have time to change their lineups, but Alex is favored 52-48 there. So that'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. There's a lot of good matchups this week. I mean, I feel like I'm really intrigued to see how a lot of these turn out, and a lot of good storylines for sure.
Yep, Eric and Willie both are on a losing streak a bit, I'm pretty sure. So this is like a good bounce back week. Unfortunately, they have to play each other to bounce back. Clearly, Eric's the favorite because Willie doesn't have H-Han. But those two teams need a kind of a bounce back here in order to prevent themselves from a free fall. But nothing like Rob. Rob's still on a 10L streak, I think. Yeah. So you're safe from that. But one of these teams is going to have to bounce back. Maybe they split it 1-1 with the median or something. But that's definitely a bounce back week. I'll be interested to see who comes out on top there as well.
Yeah, and I mean, my game with Troy, like it's also a very important game. I think we're combined the highest projected total game between the both of us, I believe, maybe except for Trevor and Nick. And yeah, that's super important for me. I want to make sure that, especially if Nick gets a win this week, and if Willie loses playing Eric, that could put me in position to maybe move up in the standings a little bit and get a little bit of traction. I'm still behind in points for against Willie, but I really need. This is a pivotal week for a lot of teams, and Troy and my team specifically.
Yeah, I had a note for every matchup except Nick and Trevor's. Like I had no like glaring observation or like what to look out for or anything. Every other matchup seems to have some sort of storyline, some sort of context to it. Trevor versus Nick, this might be like the random game of the week. Who show, whatever. Like there's no I literally didn't have a note for it because I couldn't think of like any sort of context to make it interesting or something.
My note for myself is I've decided, I drew the line in the sand after Kirk Cousins laid an egg 2 weeks ago, that I'm starting Goff going forward, and it again bit me last week. But I'm not changing. I'm not flip-flopping. I'm leaving Goff in there. So my note is, can I finally pick the right quarterback to start by saying I'm not going to react to last week. I'm just going to leave the guy that I think is going to do better over the long haul in the starting spot.
Goff on Monday night versus Las Vegas could be low scoring. I don't know how Goff is in prime time. Maybe I would look up his prime time numbers because that tends to be a heavily um, favored trend. When a guy's playing in prime time, that can affect performance. And then on the
Yep.
exact opposite, Kirk Cousins is a divisional game at 1 o'clock. Nobody's gonna be watching that except the Vikings and Packers fans. Um, I wouldn't. I don't know what I would do either. But considering you have a quarterback battle on your hands all season, I'm about to have Kyler Murray back, even though Herbert's been really doing well. He kind of didn't show up against a big game last week. Pretty sure that was a prime time game. So, prime time is definitely a factor, and I'm gonna have a quarterback battle on my hands, just like you have all season there, Nick.
And just kind of piggybacking off of that comment for Trevor's team, I just took a little peek at his schedule for the next 5 weeks. He's got Nick this week, right? So obviously you want to get a win over a team that's already pretty much in the playoffs. But if you look at the next couple weeks for Trevor, he's got Willie, he's got Johnny 3, he's got Troy, and he has me, and he has Jason mixed in there too. So another team that's kind of got their foothold in the playoffs. But Trevor doesn't necessarily have to win this game to kind of keep his footing in the playoff race. It'd be huge if he won. But he still has a couple other games against fringe playoff teams right now with me, Willie, the 2 teams above him, the team below him, the 2 teams above him, the 2 teams below him, right? To, kind of stake his claim as a playoff team. He's on the 8 seed, right there in the bubble. This week is important, but I'd argue that the next 4 weeks for Trevor are also very important to get wins over teams that are right near him in the race.
Quick observation I was just looking at. Usually I take a peek at the median each week. This was the second lowest week since week 1, which was 108. This week was 113. Everything has been 115 and above. But I'm pretty sure it was after maybe week 1. Maybe it was after week 2. We were like, oh, what are the medians going to look like? And it got up to 120. Then it got up to like 128. And we're now back in the mid-teens, 113. It's those bye weeks. They're coming into play. I think the defenses are locking down. But we're definitely seeing more lower scoring games than we might have expected to after the first 2 weeks. 128 median is an insanely high median. And now we're back to reality. I think 113 is about where we'll see the rest of the season. Maybe we'll see, another pop off here and there. But I'm expecting if you can score, the 115s, the 120s will get you safe.
I'm gonna actually just provide one note there. I think week 8 is the only week besides the first 4 weeks where there are no buys this week. Every team plays this week. So
That's
I think
crazy.
I think we're going to see another high median this week, which could be very important. You know, there's a lot of critical games for the playoff race this week. I believe that's the case. There's nobody on my team that has a bye, nobody on the team that I'm playing that has a bye either. So this could be another kind of week 2-esque where, barring any major substantial Nick forecasted injuries, I think this could be a really high median this week. So not only are you playing your opponent, but those really valuable median wins are going to be a really big factor this week.
Wait, that's crazy. How did they have just a non-bye week in the middle of the season like that? Like who said that was all right? Who proved that?
Some guy named
And
Roger.
you will all be happy to hear that I'm predicting no major injuries this week. So it
Wait,
will
I
be
gotta
a
look at
quiet week.
That is
Anything else
crazy.
before we wrap up?
Johnny, I'm looking at you, brother. Let's
You've
see
been
it.
put
Let's
on
see it
notice. Been put on notice. Too.
this week.
All right.
Wow.
Well, we'll see you next time, everybody.
Yes, thank you guys. I think Rob said he would be able to make it next week, so we should have Rob on the pod next week. Hopefully, I think he said he wasn't going to show face until he's won a game or something. So maybe after next week he wins a game or whatever it was. But I'm kind of rooting for Rob so he's in a good mood on the pod.
Yeah, we'll look forward to that.
That's good.